Welcome to Anthrodorphins, a series that relieves the pain and elevates the pleasure of studying anthropology. I'm Rob Lemelson, an anthropologist and filmmaker. If you watched our video on gender and sexuality, you know there are aspects of human experience that feel like sheer biology, but a deeper investigation reveals the influence of culture. Race has been framed as a physical fact, but it is actually a construct, arguably as much a product of culture as ethnicity and ethnic identity. In part 1, Rethinking Race, we'll explore the difference between race and ethnicity, considering which, if any, aspects of race are biologically real, and dive into the troubled history of anthropology's approach to race. In part 2, Contemporary Perspectives on Race and Ethnicity, we'll look at experiences of celebration and oppression around race and ethnicity, delving into food, family, and more.
Ideas about race and ethnicity permeate our lives, impacting our communities and our sense of self. Racial and ethnic constructs may determine such things as who or what we think is beautiful, where we live and go to school, what kind of medical care we get, where we feel safe, and where we feel seen. Ideas about race and ethnicity can often be found at the root of violence, discrimination, and injustice, but can also be called upon to build solidarity and celebrate human diversity. While race and ethnicity can be related or thought to overlap, they are not the same. Race is based on observable physical traits that a particular society thinks are significant. This can be skin color, aspects of certain facial features, or body shape and size. Ethnicity is based on a shared cultural heritage, including language, religion, foodways, and other traditions. Two people of different races might share an ethnicity, while two people of the same race may not. For example, Hispanic is an ethnic category used by the U.S. Census to refer to Americans who identify themselves as being of Spanish-speaking background and trace their origin or descent from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Central and South America, and other Spanish-speaking countries. But Hispanic Americans can identify as any race, and more than 20 million Hispanics identified with more than one race on the 2020 census. Meanwhile, a Japanese American and a Korean American would both select Asian to identify their race for the census or their college applications, but do not share ethnicity.
Over a century of anthropological inquiry has informed the way we think about race today. Historically, the field of anthropology has had a complicated relationship to race and ethnicity. Some early anthropological ideas and some individual anthropologists have contributed to racist thoughts and actions, but theories about culture have also been used to question commonly held assumptions about race, fight racism, and develop an anti-racist pedagogy. Some early anthropological theories, emerging in the 19th century, contributed to racist ways of thinking about human diversity. Anthropologists then saw cultures on an evolutionary continuum, with some more advanced than others. Other anthropologists and social scientists of that time attempted to categorize human beings into different races according to physical typologies that were supposedly linked to intelligence and temperament. Believing Caucasians had larger brains, and thus were more intelligent than other races, there was a great interest in skull measurement and the study of head morphology. Some anthropologists claim to be able to predict both racial and individual traits, such as mental illness or criminality, from external skull shape alone. These ideas were, of course, tautological and self-serving, seeming to prove the inevitability of racialized hierarchies that had been violently imposed during colonial conquest and enslavement. This classificatory way of thinking was challenged in the early 20th century by Franz Boas, a German Jewish anthropologist who was the founder of the American Anthropological Association, and he taught at Columbia. Boas's revolutionary insistence that social and geographical environment explained many meaningful human differences helped inaugurate the subfield of cultural anthropology. Many of Boas's students, such as Margaret Mead, Zora Neale Hurston, and Ruth Benedict, were influenced by his ideas about race. For them, culture became the key to understanding human diversity. Boas and his students argued that racial hierarchies were the product of society, not God or nature, and became anti-racist education activists. Boas's research found rampant racism in public education curriculum and funding cuts. In 1939, he announced a broad educational campaign to be conducted by more than 50 of the nation's leading educators and scientists against unscientific teaching of race problems in American schools, wrote pamphlets condemning racism, held press conferences, collected endorsements from major scientific organizations, including the AAA, spoke on radio shows, and put together a panel at the World's Fair. Ruth Benedict translated his ideas for a mainstream audience in a book, The Races of Mankind, which remains the most popular text ever written by an anthropologist on race. At the same time Boas was arguing against racist theories in anthropology, in Europe, another anthropologist was using these to rationalize and enact genocide. Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death for his role in the mass murders at Auschwitz-Birkenau, had earned a PhD in physical anthropology from the University of Munich. He endorsed racial science, a fundamental tenet of Nazi ideology that claimed Aryan Germans were biologically distinct from and superior to all other races. These false race theories underpinned the Nuremberg race laws, which prohibited marriage between certain ethnic groups, forced sterilization for people with diseases or disabilities, and ultimately the genocide of millions of people of Jewish and Romani descent and others. While not to such genocidal extremes, eugenic thought was also popular in the United States at the time, and of course racial violence, hierarchy, and discrimination continued long after Boas and still has not gone away. Today, racism is officially condemned, but many Americans still have a deeply ingrained concept of biological race. So the field still has a significant role to play in clarifying ideas of race and addressing broader issues of social justice.
Race and ethnicity are ways to categorize people. It may seem like ethnicity is primarily learned from the culture around you, while race is biologically innate. Many Americans think their race can be identified by information contained in their DNA. But this is not the case. All humans share more than 99.9% of their genetic material, and race is neither genetically traceable nor biologically real. Rather, racial categories are flexible and used by societies to group people based on appearance, which is also typically assumed to indicate deeper biological, behavioral, or cultural similarities. Definitions of race depend on who has the power to define it, why they are defining it, and what aspects of race are considered important at a particular time and place. For example, the concept of whiteness has always had a huge role to play in the United States, impacting access to political, economic, and social power. But who has been considered white has changed over the course of the 20th century.
For example, if you were of Mexican birth or ancestry in the United States in 1929, you were considered white. Then, the 1930 census changed that to non-white to limit immigration. Later, when the U.S. needed to increase its labor force during World War II, these people were switched back to white. And what it took to be black once varied so wildly throughout the country, from 1/4 to 1/16 to the infamous 1 drop of African ancestry, that people could actually change races just by crossing state lines.
No matter what meaning they're being given in particular societies or cultures at a particular time, aspects of shared biology like skin color are real, but they cannot be attributed to race, that is, any inherent differences between different so-called types of people. Rather, some of these differences can be attributed to geographic ancestry. Geographic ancestry, or the region in the world your distant ancestors came from, can impact your genetics in certain ways. Over time, local populations develop adaptations to their regional environments. Some examples: skin color. UV exposure induces vitamin D production, which is crucial to digestion and overall health, but too much UV radiation can be dangerous. Over time, the human body has adapted to UV variations in different regions of the world via differences in skin pigmentation, which is a polygenetic trait.
When the medical community links race to health outcomes, it's really just using race as a substitute for other factors, such as where your ancestors came from, or the experiences of people who may have been put in the same racial group as you. Dorothy Roberts explains that sickle cell anemia is a prime example of this. The disease is linked to areas with high rates of malaria, which include some parts of Europe and Asia in addition to Africa. It's not actually about race at all.
Numerous physiological traits are influenced by geographic ancestry, but again, this is not the same thing as race and is not visually self-evident. This leaves room for debate as to whether race is a useful concept in equitable medical research, screening, prevention, and treatment. It can be difficult to separate culture and biology as they become entwined through the lived experience of race. While race is a social construct, shared histories of racism, from historical trauma and forced deprivation to disparities in things like income, education, rates of incarceration, and environmental pollution, are embedded in institutions and everyday interactions. Meanwhile, shared histories of identification, solidarity, and resistance against this racism also shape a sense of racial awareness and identity that matters deeply in politics, culture, and daily life. Recently, there has been intense debate over teaching critical race theory, which is based on the anthropologically sound premise that race is a social construct, in public schools. Why is this such a potentially destabilizing idea in American culture?
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to dive deeper into the anthropology of race and ethnicity, check out the resources below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get your regular dose of anthrodorphins.